time in the world to reblog it. So I will now make the post on photos worth
Why are you
seeing.
picking on me?
I'm not going to be able to do it because you said I lost my. I lose.
Let me check whether everything. All right, so we are live now, and the post is out on PWS. So as soon as Fern tells me that he reblocked it,
it's already out on Luxlit. So whenever you're ready, dude.
Good. Then let's start.
And it's also now on mine. Let's do it on mine. And let's do.
I'll do the same. I'll just share, just to be sure.
Oh, whoops! I'm typing on the wrong keyboard. Never mind.
Here we go.
Damn.
I'm going to post it to Facebook.
Hello.
Too.
Hello. inConversation. I don't know, what is it? 26? I think. Yeah, inConversation. 26 May 25th of 2019. Hello, everyone. We are 4 today. And other than in the post that I just made on Photos Worth Seeing, ladies first, with us today, Jennifer, Nature Lover 69 on Tumblr. The link, of course, in the video description, the link to our blog. And with us today, as well, Cedric.
Hi there.
The link to Cedric's blog also, of course, in the video description, and as well with us as every time so far, Dr. Fernando, QBN-scholar on Tumblr, and also admin for luxlit.net. And my name is Pete. I like pictures, and you know where to find mine, I guess. So, a very, very exciting episode. I think we will have a very, very exciting episode, a very, very exciting topic. What do you see? How do other people perceive our work, and does it matter? So yeah, Cedric interestingly enough made a post, I think it was yesterday, right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
With a very, well, it was sort of kind of the exactly what we will be talking about today. But before we start, let's also say hello to the chat. All of you who watch this, you can join us on the chat live as long as we're streaming on the YouTube page of this video. So not on Tumblr, right? So you have to go to YouTube to the page. And you can hit us up on the chat. And so hello to Carol on the chat. Hello to Amy. I'm sorry, Amy Montico. Hello to Alok Sharma. Hello to Jennifer. Hello to Steffi. Hello to Roy Lindenarden's highlights. Hello to Fernando. Hello to Robert Weiss. New on the chat. I don't think I saw the name so far. So hello and welcome. And JTM Portland. Jay is here also as well. Hello, Jay.
Hello, everybody.
And let me type my hello. So, yeah, do you want to start, Cedric?
I don't know exactly where I want to start, but since you were talking about that post I wrote, I just figured that if we were going to talk about how people perceive our work, I thought it would be logical to start to see how I perceive my own work, and as a starting point. And then from there, I just went, oh, how do I look at other people's work? And what struck me was I usually am moved by other pictures very rarely, only because you've been doing photography for a lot of time, and you train your eye to look at the masters, what they do, and that's the thing you will focus on. And then you see so many pictures, so many different pictures from a lot of different people, and you kind of become very selective, and your reaction to this is something that I like with my guts becomes much rarer. I think that's basically what I was talking about in my post, and but that doesn't mean that you can't recognize that pictures are good, that pictures are, yeah, this picture is technically very good, it's very nice. There's all these technical points that you can analyze and just say, okay, this is a good picture, but it doesn't strike me in the heart or in the guts like it could have a few years before, because a few years before my eye wasn't as sharp as it is now. And so you should just become desensitized to some type of work. I think that's just what I wrote.
Totally, and to me, it's interesting because I mean, that whole idea of learning from others' photography and from others' inspiration, and not just photography but art in general, is something that we've talked about, I think, almost every episode at some point. Because for me specifically, and I'm only going to speak for me, the very fact of doing the reblogging that I've been doing with LuxLit for almost 4 years now, and I did it with Lens Blur before that for about 1.5 years, that has taught me what you're talking about. I mean, I used to look at pictures of, I mean, what's one of the tropes? You know, the person. Let's use Bud B.W. Whitney's favorite, the person with the backpack looking at the hills and stuff. I mean, I used to look at one of those pictures and go, "Ooh, that's so cool." But now you get to see so many of them that it has to be one that's really that really hits you in the gut, like you're saying, Cedric. At least for me. But so I can discuss the technical and I can say, yes, this is this is that. But there's also the specialness of the picture. And it's funny because I also shared, and I think Pete, you shared it too on Let's Talk Photography, the piece about originality is dead, long live Instagram, which was really interesting because it was covering the same idea about the fact that, you know, everybody imitates everybody else, and that's what gets promoted. But that's also what people like. I mean, when you look at, like, having been in Madrid in a couple of the major museums and seeing the repetitiveness even of these masters and their work, was really fascinating because it's something that we just do. Oh, that's cool. I'm going to do that. Oh, I'm going to do that. And then you have the quote unquote disruptors who either disrupt their own work to create something new or however. And then that gets imitated. You know what I mean? So it's something that's just a part of how we do. But even that imitation, and that's one of the things this article brought out, and it's also in a way what I think you're saying, you can still have something that imitates, but that still hits you in a certain way because it's done. There's something that's maybe indescribable. But I think what we need to do, and which is why I like what you posted and what we've talked about so often, is that it really helps us when we start doing what you're talking about to then learn how to talk about our art and how to talk about it in general, because that's something that very few of us know how to do. And we're intimidated by it too. I have to admit, most of us are very intimidated by that. Anyway, that's it.
What I find quite interesting, what you just said, and I yesterday I saw a video on YouTube, stumbled over it by accident. Dana Carvey, the comedian Dana Carvey, apparently had a sort of a falling out with Mike Myers, the comedian Mike Myers, right? Because he never really voiced it, and you just mentioned it, because of Mike Myers' character of Dr. Evil in the what is the name? What is the name of the movies? The damn.
Austin Powers.
Austin Powers movie, right? Because he based this Dr. Evil character on a character that that Dana Carvey, quote unquote, invented. So it was an imitation of, or so, which just reminded me of what you just said in terms of Dana Carvey said that in this video. He said, well, someone comes up with a an imitation of a person, because it was like a satirized imitation of a certain person, and then everyone does it. But still, the first one who figured out how to do this person, to imitate this person, is still the creator, the inventor of that character, right? Of that caricature of this person, and so everyone after that does it as well. Everyone knows how to do it after the first one got it, and so it becomes sort of uninteresting for those who, because we see it so often. I mean, there's a certain, what you said, a certain novelty factor to it. The first time or the first couple of times you see it, and then it's just gone. And what you mentioned, the picture with the backpack tourist, and I saw a similar post somewhere about. And I also think that you posted that to Luxlit, I guess, months ago, about the waterfall picture, person standing in front of the waterfall, and someone made a post about that, how we don't want to see something like that anymore. And I think I made a pretty snarky comment to that.
But who is we?
And right, exactly, who is we? The thing is, but it made me think, because why are some people who saw these types of photos, or I've never seen any of these photos, because apparently I'm in different parts of the web where people don't post this specific photo, right? But there's a question that came to my mind, and it's also has to do with this whole subject. Imitating other people's work or copying other people's work. There is a specific, we talked about that in very early when we started to do these conversations, right? There's a benefit in that we can take something out of, because we learn by doing that, and by claiming, if we claim this is our idea, etc., etc., this is probably not good manners, and not something what anyone should do. But the question is, and this is my question right now, right, is how much copying is really still a unique piece of work? Because with pictures like that you mentioned, it's always the same composition, it's always the same subject. They really look similar in terms of it's kind of fun to do that, and it's really something that we learn a lot from, really copying a picture bit by bit. But when is a copy, and when is a copy a unique piece of work?
I think, if I may, again,
Of course.
I think it depends on how you're doing the copying. At one point, if you just produce something that is an inspiration, clearly has as the techniques, you use the techniques of people you admire. I think every one of us has done that at one point, or are still doing it. But then you do it with a twist, and that twist will be your own, and it will be recognizable. And I think for that, you have to do a lot of unoriginal copying. You have to do it like tens of thousands of times, over and over again, but you have to know that you're looking for your own way of doing it while you are copying. I think it's the way to get to it. But you can't just copy, I'm going to do exactly the same, without thinking, okay, I'm doing this, but my goal is to find my voice. Without that goal, you're just gonna copy and copy and copy.
Right. And I think there's a different, I don't know if it's maybe the intention, but I guess it is the best word for this. I think there's copying for the sake of copying. And then there's, okay, perfect example. I saw a painting at Casa Forum in Madrid that absolutely blew me away. And it was a big painting called The Homeless. And it was the mother and the children, the composition, the positioning, the lighting, the paint. It made me, I don't know if you're familiar, either one, or maybe I'm going to assume you are, was it Margaret Bork White, and the pictures of the mother and her children in the 30s that she took during the Depression. It was that kind of feel and that kind of composition, and it made me think, I wonder if, was it Bork White? I think so. I wonder if she saw this picture, because there was something so amazingly similar in the mother's expression, and again in the composition. Although the painting, I have to say, just blew me away. So there's even just the by chance, the way that stuff like the photograph in that painting could look alike. But I think just sitting and copying, if you're going to have that mindset, you're defeating yourself, unless you want to do that, I will say. But I think we all, just by the learning process, usually just bring something of our own into it. And I do agree with you, though, that it is gradual. But even if you're not copying, I think finding your own style, and what you want to hear, and how that changes over time, both what you want to say and your style can change. I think that's a part of the long-term process too. Jennifer, you have anything to say? You're awfully quiet.
I know.
I mean,
yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Actually, I'd have to agree with Roy. Said being inspired by others.
Sorry to interrupt you. Probably we should read Roy's message on the chat. So I'll just wrap up what happened in the chat in the meantime. Amy started the whole thing with saying that whatever it is, what we were talking about, the certain photo or certain topic, etc., becomes cliche. And Roy Linton Arden's highlight writes, Shakespeare is a great example of this, and yes, definitely in literature, even big old German Goethe admitted that he copied from Shakespeare, right, and used a lot of inspiration from Shakespeare. Was a huge Shakespeare fan. And that's what Roy writes. Why not call it being inspired by others? Fern wrote, yes, Roy and Amy, but why does the mainstream keep consuming the cliche as opposed to the original creations? My question was maybe because the big mass doesn't even know that there is an original. It happens quite a lot. Amy writes, Fern, now that is the real question for Instagram. I think it's because they get the likes, which gains you an audience. Numbers are goal. Roy agrees. And Alok Sharma writes, identification of style takes copying as practice. So,
amen.
So
Jennifer, go for it.
I would have to agree that, yes, gaining inspiration, because if I attempted another, like a popular image, I would still add my own to it, which would make it mine. But I definitely wouldn't take all of the credit. It'd be more of a inspired by, not, I mean, there is a point where it is copying, but it's also, I've added my own part to it, which makes it my own. But I'm not going to claim that I came up with this idea by myself. So. Yeah. And
I think the it's absolutely wonderful. It's funny because this talk of Shakespeare, sorry, I am a movie geek. And Shakespeare inspiring other artists throughout history for the last 500 years or whatever, I thought of, oh my God, the Japanese director who directed Toshiro Mifune in so many
Kurosawa.
films. Akira Kurosawa, thank you. I can't believe I couldn't remember his name. And the fact that he did several films that were, acknowledged to be inspired by Shakespeare's classic works, and then how Kurosawa and his work inspired Western filmmakers to do versions of his original works, not necessarily the ones that inspired Shakespeare. So how that whole thing keeps rolling and rolling along. And I think, to be honest, yes, I think it's wonderful to acknowledge that you've been inspired, but let's be perfectly honest. You can also just be looking and seeing stuff, and something might stick in the back of your head, and maybe 2 years later, oh wow, I have this idea, and you don't realize that it might be something that you've had tucked away, and you may not even remember the inspiration. So I think there is a certain need to acknowledge, just in general, how, yes, I'm doing what Jennifer said, my own creative thing, but I'm also, and I'll use myself as the example, as someone who's constantly talking about learning and looking at these stuff and posting these things. I constantly also, even by doing that, acknowledge that I am not in any way, shape, or form totally original, that I may be putting stuff together in a certain way, but I can't also just acknowledge, there's maybe 2 of my photographs that I can say, oh, I saw something by this artist that inspired me to do this, and it wasn't really until afterwards. So it's very fluid, but I think it goes back to what Cedric posted about the learning and the seeing, because that's eventually, because it also goes back to Pete's question of what do people see, as you posted in you, and we're going to talk about that. So here's my question to this, and it also kind of, I think, addresses the YouTube conversation. One of the things that is striking me more and more now that I'm beginning to set up to sell my photography, the how to sell art workshops that I'm on online, one of the things that was suggested was doing research about what kind of photography and art sells in specific regions where people have money, which I thought was a brilliant idea. And I live close to Lake Tahoe, and I thought, ooh, let's see what they sell as far as photography is concerned in the galleries, in the better galleries at Lake Tahoe. Forgive me for saying this, but motherfucker, all of those Lake Tahoe photography galleries, at least what they were posting online, and there was very few, it was all pictures, fine art, pictures, gorgeous, of surroundings of Lake Tahoe. Why, how, what, and that's something that's been discussed before. If you're selling art in the Pacific Northwest, people really want to buy art that represents the Pacific Northwest. So what do you do if you are someone who is original? And what's going on?
Well, I think, I mean, there's copying, and then there's inspiration, and I don't know. I mean, I guess I feel like, my stuff's original because I'm the only one doing it, but also I do inspire, I take inspiration from everything that I see, from all the photos that I go through. And so, yeah, I guess I do, everybody would draw from that, I would think.
I mean, I think one very important aspect of that whole thing, other than doing something really consciously saying, okay, I like this, I want to do something like that, or even the exact same thing, is also that the borders are extremely blurry. I mean, there are only this and that amount of different types of compositions, right? There are only a limit. There's only a limited amount of colors or color schemes. There's only a limited amount of I don't know, topics that we can. And it's the same in music. We only have we only have this and that amount of different chords, right? And still we can make a million different melodies from that. But combining all of these things, and there's a lot of stuff that goes unconsciously, right? I like this color scheme that kind of stuck in my mind, and I see this scenery, and I sit. Either I fumble around with the settings on my camera to try to mimic that specific color scene, dial in the colors that I think fit best, or want to shape and carve out, or I just take it as it is because it reminds me consciously or not on something else. Or I sit at home on the computer and or in my dark room and play around with that. So there are a million ways how different sorts of inspiration come together and form a new picture. And then there's another thing, something that we very often forget, that it's not just one picture, it's always the body of work. That no painter ever, no photographer ever, no artist ever just had that one piece that totally defined him or her, or that got this person to that point. There's always a huge, maybe unknown, but a huge amount of work that was done before and that was done after, usually, right? Or, well, sometimes it's the last piece of work they did that stood out, whatever. But I think that looking at just one bit is completely missing the picture.
I would agree.
I muted myself. Let's look at the chat. What happened in the chat in the meantime? A lot of stuff in the chat happened. Carol wrote, "What? I know we have to start earlier."
A lot has happened in the chat.
A lot has happened in the chat. Roy continued with that nothing is really original. Beowulf, maybe, perhaps, he wrote. Carol wrote, "We are also the result of multiple sources, yes, of inspiration since the moment we opened our eyes. Books at school, visits to museums, TV, films, so many things." Roy agrees. Cedric wrote, "Fun thing, Kurosawa inspired Leone, who inspired Japanese period drama of the 80s, which inspired Tarantino, and the wheel keeps turning." Exactly. Carol wrote, "What makes it original, I think, is our own input from our own life, the layers from our own emotional life." Mark Rome. Hello, Mark. Maybe it's more in terms of themes, Fern. You can post stuff from Lake Tahoe, but to make your own and thereby build up your own following. Alok Sharma wrote, "In technology world, the technology can remain new for a certain period, and after that it's no more piracy or illegal and fair to get inspired." So, well, there's a copyright debate, right? Comes in here after which amount of time the way we approach something becomes public domain. It's a very interesting thing. When is it so not original anymore that it's belongs to all of us? Could be an interesting topic as well. Roy writes, pesto, Cedric, whatever pesto means. So it's really a matter. So it's really a matter of which of those in the line are good and which not so much. Oh, yes to Cedric. That's what he meant by pesto, Cedric. And Cedric wrote, well, the personal twist. Yes to, yeah. So
yeah, and I wanna address Roy's comment about the where is it? Well, but was it Roy or Mark? One of the two.
Mark.
Finding, it's more in terms of themes. I agree with that, but then, and it goes back to a whole other issue that we've talked about before, which comes down to, are we imitating because we want to improve our art because we want to keep enjoying it, or are we imitating and trying to find themes because we want to sell it, and that is our main goal? And to me, those are two different things. I mean, yes, I want to sell, but I'm also going to keep doing. And interestingly enough, with the nature photography, let's stick to Lake Tahoe, for example. I have done nature photography every once in a while, like when we were in Bavaria, in the Alps last year, Pete and Steffi and Heiko and I. Now, those three, especially Pete and especially Steffi, are brilliant landscape photographers. I don't even try to imitate them because I just can't. However,
well, I would love. I would love for you to imitate me, so then you can tell me what I do, because I have no idea what I'm doing.
I think imitating is all pretty much fair game. There's no.
I can't hear.
What? You couldn't hear this? No, I was saying that imitating is pretty much fair game unless you do like exactly like, basically if you steal a picture, if you steal negatives, that would be stealing. If you pose as someone else, that would be stealing. But you could do exactly the same thing, and legally there's nothing to prevent it. And to answer your question, Fernand, why not both? You can. Right. You can imitate to improve, and at the same time you build your own way of doing it, and at the same time you can try to sell it. You can do all those three things at the same time. Try to improve, try to find your way, and try to sell. It's not mutually exclusive. And when I remember when I was in photography school, and it's as a teacher, so it's still something that I use. You ask students to okay, you're gonna explore this subject, but you're gonna do it like this person. You're gonna do landscape like Jean Lucieff or whatever. That's simply assignment, so they can master the techniques and just see different things. What did this guy do? Oh, he was an analog expert, and he burned a lot of the contours. He spent a lot of time in the darkroom. You're going to try to do the same digitally, and that's just a pretext to just go through the techniques. And then I was just thinking, like 10 minutes ago when we were having, I had a thought in going through my head. Ideally, we should be inspired by as many things as possible and put as many things as possible in our photography, like movies, paintings, anything that moves us has to go in, and it goes in. I think that's my opinion, is that we can't help but put everything we like in life. Anything it goes, it shows through it, and the more you're gonna be aware of it, the more original, even though you're inspired by many things, you're just gonna make a mix of it, and your own self is gonna express. You're gonna express yourself through it, and then it's gonna become more original. I don't know if we can be completely original. I don't really think so, but at least as honest as we can. That's just what I think is going on when we try to take pictures.
Totally.
Absolutely. There's Carol wrote absolutely. Also, absolutely agree. Nothing to add here. Is perfect point. And Carol wrote on the chat. You can also improve without imitating. Yes, absolutely. Of course you can. There's nobody. I don't think that anyone would disagree. The thing, though, and I think this is the point, and you mentioned it, Cedric. The point of imitating for learning is to learn a specific way of seeing, or a specific way of working, a specific approach to add the toolbox we have, right? So how did this person approach photography? How did that person use colors? How did this person use perspective? So that is doing that instead of just reading about that or talking
Right,
about
right.
that, or so really doing that, trying to put it in effect, really, because I think this is one of the big, rarely talked about subjects, except for in our conversations, because I bring it up all of the time because it's one of my favorite things, is that all these photography rules or rules in art in general, nobody sat down and said, we have to do it this way because I said it, and you have to do it this way because I said it, and therefore it is right. It is, these rules are not rules, are the same kind of rules how we have rules in society to make things easier. It doesn't mean that photography doesn't work if we don't stick to these rules. It's just to help us realize why certain photos work in our minds. Why do these things have a certain effect? And making this conscious so that we understand why things work, and then we can use that. And this is the same thing why I personally always have to laugh when people use this, in my personal opinion, stupid phrase, you have to know the rules so that you can break them. No, you have to know the rules so that you know why certain things are done this or that way, and not to break them. You can only break the rule if you know the rule. So this is the fine line. And then there, I mean, during the very short time when I worked in as a teacher, on filmmaking teacher, it was also some of the students, yeah, we want to be artists, right? And so we have to break rules. No, the first thing, you have to learn the rules so that you know how things are perceived by people, by the huge majority of people. These rules are simply, it's like gravity, right? If you have an apple in your hand and you open your hand, and the apple will fall down, and therefore if you paint something blue, it will automatically shift into the background for most people. And if you have a red thing in the picture, then it will automatically jump into the foreground. This is just how it works. And if you know why that works and that it works, then you can make things more interesting by working around these rules, not breaking them. So this is the way I see it.
Right.
Please,
And I think no. And at least for me, that saying that you harshly criticized about, you have to know the rules to break the rules. That's what it means to me, that it's always better to understand, because again, and it goes back to what you posted at what the conversation was going to be about. How do people see? And let's go to, what's his face, Magritte. Wasn't it Magritte that this is not a pipe? And the was it Magritte?
Yeah, Magritte, René Magritte.
Okay. And Picasso and others, when they break the rules and do something that's not familiar, or like the Lake Tahoe thing, this is what people have as part of their worldview of what works, what's art, whatever, what they like, what tickles their fancy. And then somebody comes along and puts a guy with a bowler and an apple on his face, or says, this is not a pipe, or however, ce n'est pas un pipe. Then things are shaken up, and we start to understand what we've talked about, Pete. As a matter of fact, the very, very first films that showed a train coming into the station towards the camera, people had no reference to what that was, and they would freak out. And that was in Europe and in the Americas. Eventually you learn, oh, this is how this works. And so I think you do need to have a foundation. But I want to address what both of you have talked about, Cedric and Pete. To me, the whole imitation thing, because I am very limited it's not an excuse. It's just how I've learned to accept that I do have incredible limitations in how I create my photography. I can't do the imitation. I get inspired by something maybe and tweak it. But even when I'm in camera raw tweaking the photographs, I'm not really thinking, oh, I want to do this way or that way, because I just don't think that way, and I just don't work that way. I mean, I still understand that there's stuff that inspires me and comes in and trickles in, and I might not be aware. But to do that sort of learning by imitation, just thinking about it, my mind shuts down. Because I'm not an extremely talented, I don't have an imagination, and I have a conversation with the photograph. That's actually, so I'm creative in my way, and I've learned to do that. And then about the breaking rules, and then I'm going to shut up. I find it fascinating that even now, I know more about photography, but when I was taking pictures with my little Nikon D50 6 years ago, I was doing stuff that I shouldn't do, and it worked. You know what I mean? So you know, it's just to me, it's just a matter of trying to learn, but also trying to fit and trying to navigate however it suits you. So it's still the originality for me that is in that, just the navigating. That's all. I have nothing else to say. Jennifer, you had something to say.
I have nothing else to say. No, I don't know what to say to that.
Well, do you imitate? Do you consciously imitate to learn? As a matter of fact,
Yes, for some things I do. Yeah,
Okay.
and like I said, I wouldn't take full credit for that. It would be to learn how to do something differently, something that's not really in my realm or that I'm really comfortable with. But yeah, imitation, you know, I know this isn't my style and I don't do this extremely well, but I'm going to have a shot at it. And, you know, so inspired by, not, you know, I don't want to copy anybody's work. You know, I want to be my own person with my own photography. You know, this is the style, but
It all depends. It all depends also of what's your goal as a photographer, because there's many types of photographers. That people just want to be out in nature and take pictures, and they're very content just doing the same thing over and over, and just say, oh, I saw this type of bird, and I saw this animal, and I managed to get a nice shot, and I'm very happy with it. And then there are people who are obsessed with. What I've done is just shit. I have to go through, and there's those who want to be professionals and are more at ease when dealing with clients, and so we're very different with. And I think especially on the internet, you've got professionals, amateurs, got everyone is in the same community, and so I think it very much depends on what kind of photographer you want to be, and we won't have the same goals, we won't have the same expectations, and we won't have the same way at looking at other people's work, at our own work, and that makes it, I think, very hard to talk to each other and understand each other, and we need to be very careful, I think, when we start engaging in the community, because we come from our little close space blogs. For me, especially my blog, because it's a place where I will write down my doubts. I will. It's very. It's a paradox, but it's very private space, but it's open to the public, and other people, they treat their blog and they just put the very best, and yeah, well, it's gonna make it very hard to communicate efficiently on such very difficult subjects.
Oh, I totally agree, and I have to say there are two things to that. One of them is, oh, by the way, I loved what you said on your post about you have your portfolio, and then you have your Tumblr. And actually, I decided to do precisely that at the beginning of the year when I was putting together, how do I want to present myself as a professional photographer, the way that I'm doing it, my own way. My Tumblr's my playground, and where I express all that. Not that I won't necessarily start, because I do want to start writing some of that stuff down and presenting that as well on my. But Tumblr is where I can get stupid, where I can rant, where I can fail miserably with a photograph that I thought was brilliant. And so there's that. And I wanted to thank you for writing that on your post. But the thing about the different kinds of photographers, I think and I don't disagree with you about being careful. And I think that's a part of what like Pete and I and what Jennifer joined us when we did the critique. We critique all kinds of photographs, but we try to be more than anything else considerate and say, from my point of view, this is what I'm seeing. So, there's always people who might object to that, but the bottom line is that's really, and especially in our world of so much social media, one of the things that happens is we're exposed, like you said, to all that kind of different photography. But being exposed to that kind of different photography also helps me to learn. You know what I mean? It opens up my view, and it may influence even unnoticeably to me how I view photographs, how I view my own, how I do the process of in Camera Raw, because I don't use Lightroom. And I don't know how to do Photoshop, except the fix and what is it? Fix and replace. And I've only done that like 10 times. That's the only thing I know how to do. So, but the bottom line is, seeing all this other work is, at least for me, and I guess it goes back to what you just said, Cedric, you have to find your way. For me, it's fascinating. I love this. And any kind of photography. Yeah, totally. Anyway, that's it. What, Jennifer?
Question.
Oh.
Question. What is, you mentioned you have your blog also, which I love what you said, so that you can fail miserably. What is failure? How do you define failure in photography?
Okay, so I'll give you an example. And I've talked about this before. There's a photograph that I did with my D50. I was at work. I happened to see this strap that they use to tie down equipment. It's a webbed cloth cotton strap about this thick, and it has a buckle. I mean, very common. I don't know if I can show you the picture if you want. But this photograph got maybe 20 likes. Okay, and it's a black and white photograph. However, I still love that photograph. I think the detail, the color, the bokeh, the depth of field. I mean, there's just so much to it that's fascinating. The curvatures and the way that this thing almost looks like an eye. So I showed it to TJ, who was on our show, who is our staff photographer where I work. We do have some creative types, and we do have a staff photographer who actually did study photography and who's been a great help to me, and we discuss all kinds of stuff. And I showed him some of my photographs, and that was one of his favorites. So your question is a very good question, and I've shown it to someone else who absolutely loved it as well in the same ways. But I think it goes back to the very beginning of what it is that we're talking about when we talk about our photography and how do others see it. And the whole thing with the themes, like with the Lake Tahoe thing. I have had photographs every once in a while that on Tumblr have gotten very few likes, but I've gotten several incredibly, from just sweet, cool comments to, oh, I love this and this and this about this picture. So that about the failure is a very good question, because what I consider failure is what eventually, and going back to what Cedric said, what eventually doesn't move me, what doesn't fit my view, and not necessarily has to be my style, because sometimes I change my style a little, because I have a conversation with each image, and the image tells me what it wants. But to me, that's the failure, when eventually I don't see that it fits. Also, now that I have my portfolio, what I'm trying to present, at least starting, as the certain kind of dramatic, usually black and white, high contrast, very linear, sometimes abstract photography that I do. So failure is subjective, and that's the failure to me. The failure can also be a photograph that gets 2,000 likes, which has happened to me, and I don't think it's that great at all. And you know what? I'm not going to try to sell it. I don't care how many people like it, because it doesn't fit my view of what my portfolio will be. Period. So but again, it also goes back to my constantly learning, constantly evaluating, looking at other inspirations, and still figuring it out. I don't think I will ever be solidly able to say, this is who I am, because I'm very comfortable with the ambiguity. And the fact that I don't have a whole lot of rules, and that I know how limited I am, but I also know how talented I can be within my limitations. Does that make sense? I'm becoming
Absolutely.
a cheerleader. Yes.
Absolutely. But I find that, because I asked the question because you mentioned it in the last conversations a couple of times about notes and how that you don't understand often why certain photos have a lot of notes and others don't. And I think we're all in the same boat, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I have a couple of photos on my blog that compared to others, of course not, but for my blog, they went through the roof, right? And I sit there and I ask myself why. And then there are photos that I love, and I say, and we're really, and I know how put a lot of work in it, and I think they are much better photos, and nobody seems to care about that. And so I stopped wondering about that a long time ago, and I just simply post what I like. What moves me in terms of every photo that I put on my blog is a photo that I personally can connect with, and that I have, and I love the expression that you have a conversation with the photo, and the photo tells you what it wants, because that's the exact same way I feel about the way I work, and not only photography, with everything else as well. So a story tells me how it needs to be written, and a photo tells me how, and maybe in half a year it will tell me a different story, right? So and I find it interesting in terms of, because I have 2 photography blogs, one for mostly landscape photography, and if I have photos that do not fit on the landscape blog, and if I post them on the other blog, which has only like a 10th of the followers, I will get more attention on that blog than I would, because I tried it a couple of times, and it's super interesting. So the audience, which kind of audience we built over time, or we attracted over the time, and with a certain consistency, is such a huge factor in this all. And so the word failure, I wanted to get it, to really understand it, whether you consider how others perceive your work as failure, or how you perceive your work.
I had, if I can, just because otherwise I will completely forget about saying it, and it's being said exactly right now in the chat about recently. I think there's, I don't know if it's a problem. This is just a state of fact. When something is reblogged in the photography community, all you get is, you're going to get likes. You're not going to get reblogs. Because we have our own blogs. Some of us have a reblogging blog on the side, and thanks to community blogs like BWS, Lensblur, and Luxlit, those pictures get reblogged, and other people who are outside of the community get to see them. And back in the day when the blue tag existed, and when Radar was much more active with photography blogs, you'd get a chance to go out of that little closed system, which only provides likes, and likes doesn't allow you to show what you're doing. It's just like we're just patting ourselves in the back, like we have a big round of 1,000 people, and we're just like, oh, nice picture, nice picture, nice picture, and it stays within that system. And now I've started working very slightly on using, there's a little tool in the Tumblr Labs. You can see the reblock tree of your of your posts. And now I've spent a bit of time here and there identifying which curators, landscape creators, are reblogging my stuff, and the tree of reblocks coming from that is just incredible. It's a big dot, and then it just goes every direction. I tag those people who reblog my work, say thank you for reblogging me, you're giving me a good it's tremendous help, etc. And then they follow me, maybe sometimes, and then they find, and every time I get a reblog from someone who's not in the community, who has a big following, bam, 400 notes. All my posts that are over 1,000, it's because I hit someone that's not in the community. I hit someone who's big following, and just like that. And in the past, I think, like 2011, a bit further, like 2013, it's something that happened much more often in our community. Now it's because Tumblr has evolved in not good ways. It's kind of it's gotten harder, I think, to reach people, like the tag system, the search system. Everything has gotten harder, and that's a big answer. I think what people can do is just find people reblock who are not from the community, and just see how many reblogs do you get from that person using that little tool in the Tumblr Lab.
So about the reblogs, and it's funny that you mentioned lens blur. Two things. One of the things that has diminished the presence of photography in in Tumblr overall is the fact that lens blur, about like a year and a half ago, they went through the huge change where all of a sudden there were some changes to the coding for Tumblr itself, and the person who had originally designed the absolutely brilliant interface that allowed the lens blur members to select photographs, to place timing limits and so on. I mean, it was a great program.
I remember.
That sort of collapsed. And so all of that all of a sudden is gone.
Vanished.
And lens blur really doesn't have the presence it does either, because I pretty much think that Tumblr Radar would follow lens blur's lead often, and lens blur has sort of just become another reblog site, which is nothing wrong with. I'm not criticizing or anything, but to the specific thing of the failure and lens blur and the reblogs. One of my photos from, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with this photo, I reblog. It was one of my first, if not my first photo from my trip to Spain. And it's the one from Segovia, that it's an overhead shot. It's a square format, and it's got these lines, and then it's got these tables with these square checkered black and white tablecloths, and then there's other lines from the building. The photo, I got some incredible commentary. I think it was reblogged by one personal photographer site, but then it got reblogged by lens blur, for which I'm very grateful. And I agree with you, Cedric. I always contact people who reblog my work and say thank you. Well, usually, sometimes I might miss them. But the photograph didn't get more, and this is my history with the reblogs, didn't get more than I think maybe 157 likes. I'm thrilled. I have to say, I am absolutely thrilled. But even when back in the day when lens blur was really big and I was getting my photographs have never, or very rarely, I can't say never, very rarely gotten the 1,000 or above. But I also look at, not, again, which I talked about a million times, I don't look at the likes and the reblogs as much as I look at the communication and the reactions that I get from like with that, like that Segovia photograph. I got some really just, great commentary from photographers whose work, and others whose work I admire. So to me, it's a balancing act of all of the likes and everything else, because, and whether it touches me or not, I love that. For example, I love that photograph. I still look at it and go, I cannot believe I saw this and I actually saw it and photographed it, because it's just so fucking cool to me.
Well, it's definitely the role of the community to just be together and send talk and send encouragements. Yeah, that's it's a completely different goal from building an audience. We're in it together. We're just like,
yeah. And we're still building an audience. We're just building an audience of supportive people, which, I mean, sometimes, like, I don't think you really find that in Instagram. I'm not a fan of Instagram. I know, yeah, it's a really rare thing that, like, in the photography course that I'm in, and the one, and I've talked about this before, and the one I was in before, and what's the guy, the British guy who I love his stuff. He's my favorite on YouTube. Thin guy. Does oh God, I'll remember in a second. Does incredible black and white photography. There's always this conversation. Oh, we have to form community and all that stuff, and yet we have that quite by accident, really, when you think about it, on Tumblr. And
Sean Tucker.
Sean Tucker, thank you. Sean Tucker.
Amy wrote that on the chat.
I knew Amy was going to come up with it, because we're both huge fans. Community and the whole thing. And I'm like, dude, sometimes the community is where you find it. And most people roll their eyes when, and I've talked about this before, when I mentioned, the community on Tumblr, but we're supportive. It's like you said, Cedric, we're supportive. We give advice. We talk about other stuff besides our, I've talked about my depression, my being suicidal, my hysteria over starting my own website, the fact that I hate the app, whatever. And I love the Avengers, the TV series, the Emma Peel, and I post music and, post pictures of me doing this. Yeah. And that's what's really cool, because that's the other part of it too. I think there's something fascinating when you start, again, depending on the kind of photography that you do, but when you start sharing who you are as a person, as part of how you promote yourself as a photographer, I think that is crucial, especially if you're going in the artsy direction. Hello.
I would have to agree. And I'm also going to say quality over quantity. Yeah, it's absolutely, I'd rather have 50 notes and 20 or 30 of them be amazing, people that I respect and that I admire and I look up to, and I, like their work, like genuinely, that makes me proud.
Yeah.
I could care less about the 300 that are just on there. Oh, that's a cool picture.
Yeah.
I want the 5 that are going to say a cool comment, or, tell me what I'm doing right. Not very many people tell you what you're doing wrong, right. But yeah, I want the feedback. And I think that's why we're all here.
Yes.
Is the feedback. It's
totally.
And it's interesting that you mentioned rarely people tell us what we're doing wrong. I personally don't believe in, at least not, well, no, in general, I don't believe in it's my personal opinion. I don't say this is how it's done, right? Generally, what I say is just my personal opinion. But I don't believe in telling people what they do wrong, because I don't believe there is a wrong. There are things that are more or less effective.
Well, I'm always telling you you're doing wrong,
Yeah, but I don't care what you say, so fuck you.
You didn't let me finish. I was just going to tell you that the only thing you're
that-
ever doing wrong is that you don't fucking shut up. But okay.
exactly, yeah. I know. Right. This is the only thing what I'm really good at is not shutting up.
Yes.
So the thing is, and that's why I love the work on PWS, is because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, or correct me, or disagree with me. I'm open for a discussion, right? There's one thing saying, yeah, I like that, or hey, this is cool, or really finding a way to express what exactly it is that I like about something. And this is the amazing thing, and this is my I want to take advantage of this situation right now. This is my wanting to say thank you to all the guys and girls working on PWS, and then who have been working on this blog for now years. And it's amazing how long we've been doing that. We've been doing that since 2013. So wow. I think it's 2013. Yes, it was 2013. So this is amazing, and some of Gerardo and Steffi and I think Teen and also Nikos, I think, are with the blog since 2014, which is just mind blowing, right? To be able to working with these guys for such a long time, and in Tumblr years, this is really we're grandfathers and grandmothers now, and so I like this approach because it's a very positive approach, and I think it is also an approach that not only, I hope at least, spreads good vibes, because the only rule that we have on PWS is to have fun, literally. And the other thing is that I hope that, and I know that by reading, I read all the comments, of course, of all the members, that even if it's no matter how subjective a comment like that is, there's always some sort of how can I put that? There's more than I like that or this is cool, but really the reasons. What is it that makes this photo for that very specific person to something they want to show, and why they want to show that? So this, I think, for me, it was at least by reading that. And today it happens we have MAD, so the Members Appreciation Day. So reading how other PWS members perceive my work and what they see in my photos, this is so incredibly helpful. And this is, for me, this is more helpful, even though I wouldn't mind at all if someone criticizes. Criticism is not necessarily negative, but criticizes my work and telling me what they think that I did wrong. So please go ahead, do that. I have no problem with that, not at all. But I think this is more helpful, telling someone what they did right and what worked for them in a certain piece of artwork, than what didn't work for them. Because what didn't work for a certain person is just what didn't work for them, right? And of course, what worked for someone is also just probably for them, but at least it gives a positive spin on that whole thing, and it wants me to do more and not wants me to do less.
Yes. And oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to come back to something Jen said, that we're all here for the feedback. And my first reaction was to agree, and then I thought, am I being completely honest? And then I had a moment where I just juggled with the ideas, and I realize I am, at least me, but I think it might extend to a lot of us maybe, is that it's pretty ambiguous. You want the feedback, you want positive feedback, you also want negative feedback, or at least opportunities to grow, but you don't want anyone to tell you anything because it's your little space and you're doing what you want. It's all of that at once, and you just have to juggle with that and your own ego. And I think as creators or artists or whatever, we have to keep our egos in check a lot of the time, and it's ambiguous. And I just thought about the question that was asked at the very beginning of this discussion: is how do people see our work? What do they think about it, and do we care? And maybe we could go back into that and try to see do we care? When do we care? When do we don't care? When should we care? When should we not care? Yeah, that's just what I thought when I heard. I had this little moment back and forth in my mind. But it's also it's also true for what I read in the chat with when you go to a portfolio reading. Maybe you should know who's the guy who's going to read your portfolio to see, okay, do I even agree with this guy? Do I like what he does? Do I like who is he? So you can have a kind of genealogy of the person who's going to make the reading.
Yes. Well, and even then it can vary, because it is bottom line. I mean, it is subjective. Even when you're looking at the technical, it's still subjective to a certain degree, because it's based on what I know, and it may not have been what you learned as a photographer as to how to do stuff and what guidelines to follow and so on. But I do agree totally. I mean, the bottom line, and again, this goes back to stuff that we've talked about, whether there's, and it's not just here, the rules of art and blah, blah, blah. And when you start understanding that there really isn't about the rigidity of it that makes it safer for us to say, this is where I am, but that it's always going to be fluid, even in the way that we look at our own photograph, and how it's so personal, from the way you do your photography to the way that I do my photography, the way Jen does hers, and the way Pete does his. But also how we can learn from each other. It's a juggling. It's an absolutely, and it's a matter of trying to find the balance. And I thought it was interesting that you said that, Cedric, about the ego, because one of the issues I had until very recently was not so much because of the likes, because I learned how to deal with that, but just looking at other people's photographs and going, what the fuck am I doing? I suck shit at this. I suck shit through a brick on this. I'm just not a good photographer, and blah, blah, blah. And the depression and the doubt. And it's like, oh my God. Oh, so it's not even the ego as far as like feeling superior. It's the ego as far, at least for me, of feeling, holy fuck, I don't even. Well, Pete, you remember when we started doing this, what, like 2.5 years ago? For a while there, I was like, oh, I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm an idiot. I shouldn't be talking in public. Remember? And you talked me out of it.
Of course.
And I know the only reason you did it was because you like to have somebody to laugh at when I say stupid shit. But oh well.
Okay. Now I get you to shut up.
Right. This is the only time that when directly responding to Fern in this conversation that I will be serious. Okay. The thing is, I do absolutely. I mean, those of you who watched what we did for quite a time, or once or twice, already know that we love to kid each other and to insult each other jokingly. But and please don't cry, Fern. Don't cry. Don't you cry. I have the highest respect for Fern and for his opinion, and I learn much more probably than anyone else. Those of you watching this, or those of you being in this conversation as well, by just talking to him and talking to Fern, and because I really appreciate it. And I'm glad and thankful that he takes up with me, or took up with me, and has been taking up with me for now over 2 years. But there's one thing that I want to say about also about what was going on in the chat, and what Cedric mentioned. I think we have to make a big distinction between critique and criticism. There's a huge difference. And something like a portfolio review that Carol mentioned in the chat is ideally a critique. And a critique is never something negative, not in terms that nobody can say something negative about what we did, but a critique is meant to be sort of an analysis, getting us to see things in a different way, getting us maybe on a specific path. Because if we have a photography portfolio, we usually want to present our photos in a very specific way, either a very specific niche that we want to want our photography to be shown in, or that our photography is, or like, I mean, if I would have to make a portfolio of my portrait photography, that would be a very different thing than a portfolio of my landscape photography. And so I would need different feedback, and I would certainly ask different people than I would ask for landscape photography. So I would ask people, if I were to make a portfolio, which I don't have, I only have my tumblers, then I would be very, very careful who I ask. Not because I only want positive feedback or want pats on the back. Of course, this is nice, and of course, I'd love that. But what I want is an honest opinion on what works in that very specific field, and what doesn't work, or what probably works and what probably doesn't work. And if I want to sell my photography, I want to know which of my photos will potentially sell and which won't, and why. The why is the most important factor of that. So I want to mention the photo critiques that Fern and I do, or have been doing for a while, and will do after this show. And I hope that Cedric and Jennifer will join us. This is, I think, these critiques are very, very a very good point, or because not everyone can critique photos, and this was when Fern brought up the idea of the photo critiques, and he asked me, and I didn't know. I said, yeah, okay, I'll do it, because I always do things when people ask me to do. Well, let's do this. Let's make this, and let's try this. And I'm always usually always say yeah, and of course, but then I sit there and say, why? Who am I, right? This was my, and Fern said, well, you can do it, and let's do that. And because critiquing photos is tough, and not everyone can do that. Everyone can learn that, but critiquing photos is not an easy thing. And what we do in there, and so far we had a couple of photos where we were just friendly but still brutally honest about what we think that doesn't work, or doesn't work so good with a certain photo. So honesty is, I think, one of the most important things about that. And it's also to be absolutely clear whether something is just my personal taste, right? Or if this is really something, and honesty and awareness, right? Whether something is just my personal taste, or whether this is really something that we think is ineffective. And I love to use the word effective and ineffective instead of good or bad, because good or bad is a judgment, and a judgment in art, at least in my personal opinion, is can only be subjective, while effectiveness or ineffectiveness is, at least the way I see it, more or less a neutral way of describing things. And this is at least as I see it, the way how to approach honest critique, to try to be neutral and try to be as objective as possible, even though, as we all know and as we all figured out in the past conversations, that absolute objectiveness cannot be achieved. And I
No,
think
now stop.
now fight.
No, no more fights. But it's interesting because I do remember, and I've said it before. I don't think I am. I know that one of my talents that I am very comfortable with is the critiquing, but it's something that I've learned. It's something that I studied. You know, as a matter of fact, Kurosawa. You know, breaking apart his what's the one that's the A Few Dollars More is based on.
Yojimbo, I think, isn't it?
Yojimbo, you know, breaking apart Yojimbo and doing a comparison of the visual, the cinematography, and how they both work for a bunch of students, that kind of thing. You learn how to do that visual analysis. But I studied some of this stuff. I mean, a lot of people didn't, but that doesn't mean that we can't learn, because it goes back to basically what you were talking about, Cedric, and what we've talked about before, that and Pete's question of how do people see our work. Being able to talk to people and maybe being able to ask the right questions, and knowing what it is that we are curious about in our work. It's really, you know, it's taking apart what we do and becoming more familiar with it, more comfortable with it. And for me, that really sorry ass ego thing has been very helpful, that I now know I am this kind of photographer. This is the kind of thing that I do. This is what I'm comfortable with. This is how I'm going to sell myself. And I don't know if there's a market out there, but I do know there's a market out there, because I'm doing stuff that, I don't want to say that it's new and creative, but I see things differently, and that's what comes across in much of my photography. But yeah, go ahead.
The fact alone, just one sentence, the fact alone that you are out there and do this stuff and like this stuff shows that there's a market out there for this stuff.
Yes.
Because and if it's just one person who buy that stuff, that is still a market. The question is, can you make a living on that? Is a different question, but there is definitely a market, because we will always find people who like the same things as we do. So there's no reason not to do what we do. Just imagine that, and just this one goes out to the chat, right? To a certain person on the chat. Just imagine if both of us, Fern and I, would be shutting up all of the time, or always come to the point quickly. Then this whole show would be over like in 5 minutes, and not like usual lasts for 7 hours.
You might be surprised, actually. You might be. Maybe. Who knows? Who knows?
Point taken.
What was I going to say about what Fern was explaining is that doubt is extremely useful, but you have to suffer from doubt for a long ass time before you can yields results. Take like over a decade of just being sad and sorry for yourself before you start seeing, oh, this actually led me somewhere, but I was kicking and crying the whole way, and now I'm here. And now when I say something, people strangely wait, they're listening, and they kind of agree. And that can be really strange after a while. And then you realize, oh yeah, I've learned things along the way, and I can restitute them rather clearly or efficiently, and then it pays off. But it's a very, very painful path, I think, especially the first few years. The first decade is just horrible.
Well, I don't have a decade because I'm old as hell, but I will say, so what you just said reminded me of what you said about the reblogs. And one of the things that I've come, and again, this was brought up in the Art of Selling Art course that I'm taking, is that really you need to build a sense of authority. And one of the ways that we find, I guess, artistic authority that we build that up is when we have, and I won't mention the site, but
Oops.
there's a Tumblr that reblogs mostly black and white photographs. It's just one person, and they reblog some amazing Tumblr photographers. They also reblog all sorts of classic, photography work, and sometimes art as well. And when I started to notice that my photography was being reblogged by that site, I was like, holy fuck. This is just, and it's just one person, but it was one of those moments where, and my work still gets reblogged by them every once in a while, and I'm like, holy fuck, you are putting me in the blog in a Tumblr where you're also featuring works by Bresson and Margaret Bourke-White and all these amazing photographers, and you're putting my work that you like it just as much as you like some of that stuff, and I'm like, holy fuck. But it also begins to, what you said, Cedric, it begins to make me feel more comfortable as, wow, I'm being seen as someone who kind of knows what the fuck he's doing. And now that's what I have to establish outside the Tumblr world, where, as an artist with this specific way of looking at things, I'm doing that. So it's really interesting. The other thing I highly recommend, since we talk about other inspiring shit, the film about Van Gogh, At Eternity's Gates. Highly recommend this movie. It's very artsy. It's very slow, but it touches on a lot of these subjects that we've talked about every once in a while here, including the whole creativity thing and authority and selling your art. It's a brilliant film that I would actually not mind watching again. So highly recommend that, because it's nothing new. This whole doubt thing. Yeah. Anyway.
Speaking of selling art, I had a little. We talked about the likes and the reblogs, and then to what end? That's the question. To what end? Because Tumblr is pretty. You don't get any. Of course, the community's conversation apart, you don't get anything out of it. Except on Instagram, it's different, because you'd get a following, and then you become an influencer, and then you there's a monetizing of it at some point. But here on Tumblr, it's not the case. And there's a young photographer that I used to talk with in 2011, 13, who was a very, very talented portraitist from New York, Frankie Marin. His name is. And at one point, he had so many reblogs, 20,000, but nothing was going his way. He was still struggling to get to get money out of what he could do well, and he decided, I stopped Tumblr. And he stopped for 2 years. He came back, and what he did was work on it in real life, so to speak. And he went to agencies and showed his portfolio. And then he came back and said, okay, now my Tumblr I can invest more time in it, but I'm doing it as a professional and not someone who's trying to get work from those 20,000 reblogs that nobody is going to do anything with it unless you're on Instagram or other platforms that allow it. So that's, if you want to sell, Tumblr is probably not the good place to be.
Yes, and I'm so glad, because I've been meaning to talk about that a lot, because that's one of the things that I've always thought about. And even with LuxLit, I think we have it. Oh, the badge that you're part of LuxLit, or that you belong to LensBlur, or that you're and all this stuff. And I think with Tumblr, what happened with some photographers is that, yes, someone out there saw their photography and hired them or something. But that Tumblr famous photographer thing is rare. And if you really want to sell your photography, and I think there's the difference between selling your photography and becoming an influencer. And I mean, it can go hand in hand, but even that, I think being an influencer, an influencer is one way of going as opposed to the I definitely. So I think, again, you have to, the whole ego thing, you have to figure out where you want to go, blah, blah, blah. But that's a really good point, because the other side to that is, I've seen, there was a photographer who was, I want to say, I'm going to assume they were in India, because they posted all these sometimes stunning photographs of Bollywood stars. And I remember reblogging quite a few on LuxLit. And these photographs would get maybe 1, 3, 5 likes. And then when they were reblogged, they'd get maybe 25, 30. But it was, and this was obviously a professional, because when you have Amitabh Bachchan and Shah Rukh Khan in your, I don't know if any of you know who these people are, or Aishwarya Rai, for example, you know, in one photograph, you've got authority. You got power. Yet on Tumblr, they just sort of. So it's still a matter of going out and doing what you've talked about in your post. You've got your portfolio. It's a separate world. This is something for business, yada yada, which is what I'm doing too. But then Tumblr is our playground, and Tumblr is where we can communicate, where we can complain about how we're untalented and stupid, or that Pete talks too much. You know.
I think
that's a very good point.
I can think about one, maybe just that one or two. But I think Takashi Yasui, I think it was something like that happened to him. I think if I remember correctly, at one point I would receive, because people know I've been to Japan and things like that, they would send me people from my family who don't know anything about blogging. They would just send me over. Oh, have you seen this guy? Yeah, we've seen. I'm on the same platform. Yeah, but that's just the one. And if you go into it while having that one example as a goal, it's just gonna fail, and you're gonna hate yourself over it. And I know I did. I know I've been to that place, and
yes.
I just how many years just wasted trying to just be self-loathing. It was just plain self-loathing for a couple of years or even longer because of that one lottery ticket, which has nothing
Yes.
to do with actual actions of going and trying to find clients.
Yes. And by the way, the trying to find clients, one of the things that in the art of selling art especially, I know there's exceptions, but one of the things they talk about is the people who have said, oh, you should start your own photography, and your family and your friends, they're not going to be the ones who are going to buy your art most of the time. So again, even in that circle, it's really difficult. The flip side to that, by the way, is, and I'm only going to mention this because he was very public about this, was Frederick Yardley. You know, and how many likes he got, and how, you know, you looked at his, you know, and he was, you know, apparently working as a photographer and making money and all that stuff, and he still, because of emotional issues and I'm assuming other things, just collapsed, and he was very public about it on Tumblr. So really, bottom line is, it's still our own individual journey. And I will say, for me, it's the fact that we can support each other, and be there for each other, and sometimes tell Pete that he's an asshole, you know, just lovingly, because I want to help him improve. You know what I mean? But the bottom line is, that's
what we're here for.
That's what we're here for, to tell Pete he's an asshole.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, bring it on. That's the thing. But this is what I think the big difference is between, and I mentioned it, or we mentioned that a lot of times, is Tumblr to any other photo sharing platform is that Tumblr is not a photo sharing platform. Tumblr is a blogging platform. And so I personally use Tumblr as my, instead of television, right? It's my on the one hand side, right? It's my I find my entertainment on Tumblr. Most of my entertainment. I don't watch TV. I don't listen to the radio. I have my entertainment is YouTube and Tumblr. And of course I have, well, I now have Netflix, okay, and Amazon Prime, but I can choose what I watch. But So we're not, most of us, and we're back at the whole community thing, do not use Tumblr as a pure photo sharing platform. And like I used to post my stuff on Flickr before I went to Tumblr, and it was just I found it extremely lifeless. It was just seeing pictures of anonymous people, and on Tumblr I suddenly had stories, because either on the blogs themselves I had, or when some people, when we connected, right, and this was uh, either through comments. And I remember, can you remember the time when suddenly the comments were gone, the comment feature was gone? This was what an outcry.
Everyone
And
was
this was,
so pissed. Everyone
yeah,
was so pissed about it. It was just horrible.
absolutely. And this is so we do other things on Tumblr than just not that there's anything wrong with that, with but then just sharing our photos.
It's a journal. We're
Yeah,
It's
a
using it
journal.
as a journal.
right. And some are more some do more personal stuff. I stopped doing really personal stuff on Tumblr. I did that as well, but I do it in a different way, right? I put my stuff usually in stories, and or well, I've been writing some personal things, I think, lately, some again, but others. And but I think this, for me, this is the amazing thing about Tumblr, that we find everything there. It's like to use an analogy, it's like Costco, right? You find everything in there, and you can choose everything, and you can put your meal together. And that's what I can't
Yeah.
do on Flickr. That's what I can't do on 500px. That's what I can't do on Instagram. And I mentioned it in the last episode that I will make an Instagram account. I made an Instagram account, indeed, and
Congratulations.
immediately deleted it again, because I was so appalled. I was appalled by I got recommendations by Instagram, and it was only and exclusively from some celebrities who posted their advertisement, because it's not even a personal thing that they do. Most of them I knew by name, but why would I be interested in the Kardashians? I don't give a flying fuck about the Kardashians. And that was the first thing I got on my fucking Instagram feed.
The algorithm doesn't know you yet.
Apparently
There you
it
go.
doesn't, because I don't have Facebook, so apparently it doesn't know me.
Yeah.
So I'm still thinking, because I promised it, so I will do it, and I will talk about.
It's because he's not on Facebook. I'm replying to Carol. It's just he.
Wait,
Right.
I
don't have
call
those-
foul. Hold on, I call foul because your algorithm recommendations on IG are probably based on your searches on your browser. So now we know that you've been following the Kardashians and searching for them on your browser, and you've kept it a secret all this time.
Absolutely not, because I made the
But-
Instagram account on my phone, and I don't use searches on my phone. So, and it's a different Google account on, because of an Android phone, and I made a Google account for my Android phone, and it's a different Google account. So it's just I did up until the day that day I didn't even know who the Kardashians were, right? So I Googled them later, so can't be that.
Aha.
I'm not ashamed to tell you what my Instagram feed would be if it were linked to my actual Google account that I use, but I can't say that because YouTube would kill the video, because it would not be safe for work.
You mean all the cussing we've done is well, actually, at my job, yes, it can be. I'm lucky that way. Anyway, so are we
Okay.
done? Or go ahead, Jennifer.
Hold on. Mazette, but now part of the Tumblr community is on IG, and maybe the spirit is also there.
Yes. What do you think? Are you on IG?
I used to be. I'm not on
And what do
IG
you think?
anymore. And I didn't like Instagram for photography, only because it asks you to crop it so much. I don't shoot for Instagram. I think that you actually have to shoot for Instagram. So I find that my photos, I'm like, no, I don't want to take that much off of my image. So
Well,
usually,
now they let you adjust, because I don't shoot. I mean, I shoot square sometimes, but I don't always. And so now they will let you adjust it so you get your full 9 by, what is it, 1 by 2, or what is it, 2 by 3 or 4 by 5, however you shoot
really?
it will. Yeah, there's also applications that will help you do that too, I will say. But yeah, I don't find the same sort of communication on Instagram, even with my family. It's just not the same. I'm still a big Facebook fan for some stuff, and for the photography community stuff, definitely Tumblr. Definitely
I
Tumblr.
think Facebook is evil, but and then
Yes,
Instagram,
well,
I don't feel I don't know. I felt part of the community because I found the community on Instagram. So when I searched them out, then I did have that as well as Tumblr. So it was both a little bit.
Right.
But I do, I mean, I wasn't on Instagram doing tags and everything else because it's the only place my girls were ever put up. So I didn't try to be found on Instagram either. So yeah.
I'm on Instagram, and there's part family, friends, and since it's connected with Facebook, it kind of, I felt it was easy to do the transition. But then I think having a Facebook account that's linked to it, and I have a Facebook page for my photography too, which is more local. It's very local. Like, it's gonna be people I meet, people I know, and that if they want to see, and I don't update it ever. But I think the fact that it goes together kind of helps. And then I just put on Instagram, I go through my archive and I just pick one and say, okay, today it's gonna be this one. It's going maybe once or twice a week, and I think if you use the right tags at the right time of the day, you can yield some results. But I don't do it for any type of result. But I suppose I know people who've been from starting an IG and trying to get to more and more, and now they're over a few thousand followers. But it takes a lot of energy, like really, really a lot of energy to go through that. And they are very active on it with stories, with always engaging. And I don't have time for that. So I'm just like, okay, fine.
And here's the thing. I mean, I use the Sean Tucker principle of, I post once a week and that's it. But I'm not looking for the heavy likes or traffic. So when I was in Spain, I was in Madrid with Nuria Nielfa, who, we were at a cafe where we went and sat down, and all of a sudden the table next to us was empty. And there was, I think, like a 24 to 105 or 70 to 200 millimeter lens just sitting there. So we called over the server and said, oh, somebody, left their lens here. And it turned out that it was this guy who was photographing on the other side of the cafe, coincidentally with an A7R3, same model that I have. And so once I saw that, I went over and talked to him, yada, yada. Food photography that is absolutely amazing with natural light, by the way. And I don't think it's just the camera. I think it's just that he's a really good photographer. So of course it's a superb camera, I think. So anyway, yada, yada, gives us a card. I follow him on Instagram. Like, I want to say over the last 2 weeks after that, I want to say maybe 25 to 35, because it's a Madrid food blog. All of a sudden, all these restaurants and hotels in Madrid are following me. And I'm sitting there going, what the fuck? And they're following me and not even liking my pictures. So it's like, you know what? No, so that whole follower thing, which can happen on Tumblr too. We have the bots and we have all that stuff. But and I'm with you, Jennifer. I clean out my my followers. If you're following me, you're gone. I block you or I report you. But yeah, it's. I think it's deciding, like you said, Cedric. This is what I want to do with this, and it's a tool. It's a tool, and it can work for somebody else. It may not work for me. The Facebook thing, by the way, I will say, Facebook. If you do start using it and start using Facebook to promote your work there, I'm almost certain it's a for-fee thing, because then it becomes advertising your business. But they do have great analytics that you can use.
That's one of the reasons why I don't invest more time, because every time you get notifications for things you never asked, and they remind, please post on your Facebook page. I can't. It's absolutely, just leave me alone. I don't need to see that little red thing coming, and please post on your photography page. I know that I really abhor Facebook for anything else than just connecting with people, keep in touch with people that I meet when I travel, and I barely just use it for that. But the very never-ending trying to hook me into using it more, I can't. So I have it. I have my presence. It's all my portfolio is on it, but just sometime when I remember, okay, now I'll post one thing and see you in 3 months.
There you go. It's all about how you want to use it. So anybody else got anything else?
I'm not allowed to say anything anymore. So.
Who said that?
The person who will have the next conversation with you and you alone on my channel, right?
If you just watching, like, okay.
And I will just be bored. No, I won't even be in the conversation. So Carol and Fern next time will have the conversation.
Why? What did Carol say? Oh, now shut up, Pete. Oh.
The burn.
Uh-oh. So wait, did Fern? No, she didn't. But anyway, so Pete, you want to close this up so then we can take a break and do the critique?
No,
later?
better you close this up this time.
No, you always do the intro and the closing. You do it.
All right.
I don't like to talk.
I know, right? So yeah, then we've been talking again for almost 2 hours. It was tremendous fun, at least for me, and I hope for you guys too. And I hope this won't be that this wasn't the last time in this round or with these people. So everyone is, of course, invited back every time. It was a blast to have you on, Cedric, and I hope you'll join us again soon.
Whenever, I was very happy to be able to join first time, and just like I just learned about these very recently, because I decided to just try to invest a bit more time in the community recently. So yeah, kind of back. I was more active like 5 years ago, and then my Tumblr just existed, and now I'm whenever you want.
We'll simply let you know, right? And whenever you want, join us. Also, a blast to have you on the show, Jennifer. Even though this time we didn't even let you talk as much as last time, right? So you'll have to catch up next time when you will be joining us, when we will be talking, and that's something we will definitely do when we will be talking about phone photography, because neither Fern nor me do really have a lot to say about that. So
I like it.
And then, well, Cedric will be on there as well. I think I have someone. Heiko is not a phone photographer, and Heiko wasn't on the chat today. So, but Heiko is not really a phone. Of course, he can join, but I think I have someone really good for this topic, and who also already mentioned that she might want to join one day. So, no spoilers yet. I hope that some of you lovely people on the chat will join us one day or one day again. Well, next time the conversation, of course, will be Fern and Carol, just the two of them, as we established. So, yeah, thank you all for joining. Thank you to the chat. It was a blast, of course, to have you on. Sorry if I wasn't able to comment on everything or read all of your posts, and not even able to say hello to everyone. So yeah, till next time. Now the four of us will have a photo critiquing session, which will not be live but will be posted on Luxlit, I think. And when Fern messages me that when he posts them, they will be, of course, as well on Let's Talk Photography.
Yes.
So thank you all again for joining.
Thank you.
Chat.
Thank you, chat.
Don't hang up yet.
Bye-bye.
To Jennifer and
next
Cedric,
time.
don't leave
I'm
yet.
staying.
Yeah, please stay in the call, but we will stop the broadcast
Just
now.